Alright, so Joseph had a question about just kind of the general scope setup. This is what I do. I'm not going to cover everything in extreme detail because I have a project coming out soon. It's going to cover a lot of this, the most obsessive detail. But so just talk about mounting your scope level. There's a few different ways I've seen this done. What I do is I want to send it level, so I'll throw my send it level on the rail here, which on the outside of the send it level it has just a standard liquid bubble level, or spirit level. I'll pull that off. I will throw the scope in the rings. I will level out the cant of the rifle and lock the bipod in once the send it level tells me that my rail is level. I'll throw the scope on here. I will throw the rings on, just barely get them started to where I can still rotate the optic within the ring. I will throw the spirit level on top of here, and then I will proceed to rotate the scope as I tighten it until it's level with the send it level. That's where I start. When I didn't have a send it level, then I would just grab a good quality spirit level, but I've done some testing, they're not all created equal. Some of them are better than others. That's all I'm going to say. And I would just throw it on the rail here, tighten this down as tight as I can get it to where no amount of me rotating the scope is going to change the level of the action where I based it off of. And then I'll throw the scope rings or the scope mount on, and then same process. Lightly throw the top part of the rings on with the scope, rotate it until it's level with the level on top of the turret. Now if you have a turret that's not level, there's a different way we can do this, and it's kind of the same way I used to check it. And then I'll tighten it down and level it. How I have checked this in the past is at 100 yards, I will draw a perfectly straight vertical up and down line that is visible at 100 yards with my gun. I'll go out there in the evening or early morning when I have no mirage, I have no optical distortion in my optic. It's going to make me believe it's not level or I'm getting false information. And then I will go into 25 power, so my optic goes to, and I will focus in on it, and then I will check my level of my optic or my on my turret or whatever against that with the level of my action, if that makes sense. So I'll have the send it level, I'll have a spirit level, and I'll look down range, and all three of them should be, we want less than 3 degrees of cant. Really you want less than 1 degree, and we could run the math on that and show you how big of a difference when you get out the distance, how much that plays into it. Misconception. So I don't care, well, let me back up. You want the scope to be level when you pull the trigger to what's comfortable on how you shoulder the gun. So if you're a person who typically cants the rifle a little bit because that's what feels good in your shoulder pocket, that's fine. You just need to make sure that at that point, that's how you always shoot the gun, maybe where it's slightly rolled over one direction or the other. If your buttstock doesn't have a cant feature, then you know that your optic is level. It's just really a reference point. You just need to be level every time you shoot. So I know some people that their buttstock has a tilt or pan function, whatever you want to call that, and it will be slightly oriented to better fit their shoulder pocket. Not all rifles and stocks do that, so you need to keep that in mind. For me, I just run it, everything straight. This is the way I shoot. Next thing you talked about was length of pull, and I'll try to explain this in this video. At least my thoughts on it, which I think differently on length of pull than probably almost anyone else who's going to watch this video, but once I explain it a little bit, I think more people will be like, duh. Alright, so now we're going to talk length of pull. Alright, so here's just the common way that people are going to tell you to do length of pull. Just grab your gun, put it in your arm like this. See where your hand reaches. Alright, some people say go off of the palm of your hand and where it reaches the grip. Some people say grab the grip and see where your trigger finger goes. So you can see mine pretty much good 90. just like this. Alright, so that's the way to do it. That's the easiest, quickest way, dirty way to do it for 90% of the applications. Just for this example, I had pulled my length of pole a little bit longer so my finger was where it needed to be. I'll actually reset this here and I'll actually run a slightly shorter length of pole. The reason being, you'll find, and I've been doing this for 7 years now in the shooting of the sport, is it's only if the length of pole is slightly too long or just too long in general, some positional shots to keep that zero muscle tension position where you're not putting wobble into the gun, which is like highly underrated, is almost impossible because you're like turkey necking to get up behind the gun, especially on lower positions, like when they're really low and you can't shoot them like a modified prone. I mean, it just makes it so much difficult. It's much more difficult to achieve good eye relief and get your eye directly behind the optic, and especially if you're trying to still shoulder the gun, maybe to spot impacts. So if you do the length of pull trick, I encourage you to try to pull about 1/2 inch to 1 inch off your length of pull. Go shoot prone. You probably won't notice a difference if you don't have a really finicky eye box. On my Minox, I don't see an issue. I'm not too close to it. Everything seems fine. And when I shoot positional, especially on a lot of awkward lower positions where most guys are struggling, I'm not struggling to shoulder this rifle and look through the eye box and get a good consistent cheek weld. So that's where my train of thought is a little bit different. Find your length of pull, then try it shorter and go shoot a bunch of positional, go do some dry fire, put yourself in weird positions and compare how your muscles in your shoulders and your arms feel when you're in those positions and see if you can still be perfectly stable. You'll find that if you're shooting off of something extremely stable, like it doesn't move, doesn't have wobble into it, there is a way every single time to get yourself behind that gun and get that pretty much as stable as prone with no wobble. And if there's any wobble, that's you, and one way that we can mitigate us putting air into that or that wobble is with our length of pull, where we're not turkey necking and creating all this muscle tension back at our shoulders that's going to create wobble. Because then when we reach forward, if we have tension back here and now we're reaching forward on our scope or up on our rail here, now we're creating even more muscle tension, and now this hand that should just be kind of controlling the elevation of our gun and keeping it steady is now shaking, creating a vibration, and then your shoulders and everything start to play into it too with your recoil shoulder. So I think it's really overlooked. Do the length of pull trick for your gun, figure out if it's either the palm or how your finger. I think the finger is an important thing because I want a good purchase on the finger, but I'd rather have my finger a little bit farther forward if I have to, which is what's going to happen when I decrease the length of pull. My finger's going to end up a little bit farther forward. That's easier for me to just kind of change the angle of my finger a little bit to keep that 90 and a good consistent trigger squeeze than it is for me if my finger's back here because it's too long. Alright, so that's just my personal preference. Everyone pulls the trigger a little bit differently and everyone has a different school of thought, but the point is try different things. Just don't get tied to what one person tells you. Don't just listen to what I say. You know, take advice from different people, figure out what works best for you. Go out, dry fire, and shoot the gun, and let the evidence speak for itself. Is really all I'm trying to say. So I hope that helps for correct length of pull. That's pretty much all I got on that topic. So.